Hello and welcome to a Hey Arnold bomb. On these, I just go through a bunch of episodes all in one video because, there's so many Hey Arnold episodes and I just don't have time to sit down and talk about them all individually. So this is sort of a way for me to talk about them, give them all their due, and also just make time for all of them. It's funny because Doug Walker actually, whose vlogs I take inspiration from for the Vlogsters, actually started doing these for Steven Universe because he was having trouble keeping up and this is the best way to do him. So basically once I finish a disc on my Hey Arnold Complete collection, I'm just going to go through and quickly talk about them, unless there's a particular episode I really want to talk about it in full depth. So yeah, let's get started. So I already talked about Operation Ruthless in depth, so the next episode was the Vacant Lot. In this episode, Arnold and his friends are playing baseball in the street very unsuccessfully because they have to stop every half a second because a car is driving by. So they're a little bummed and they just want a baseball field to play because they play in the street because everywhere else is taken. And then they find this giant lot, there's all this garbage and stuff lying there, and they figure, hey, if we clean this up, this could actually work as a baseball field. And so they clean everything up, which is the most enthusiastic I've ever seen anyone be about yard work. And they clean up, they play a game, and then once they're done, they pack up for the night, go home, and come back the next day and find all the adults are occupying the lot. Turns out they saw the baseball field, completely ignored the chalk lines that were in, and said, hey, look, a baseball field. Not baseball field. Hey, look, a place to put all our insert curse word here. So then there's a dispute between the kids and the adults. The kids try to play their baseball game around the adults with mixed success. Because there's stuff on home plate, so you can't see when the base is touched. They get it, they run over people, it's all hilarious. And eventually they get fed up, the adults get fed up with each other, because they're constantly bumping into each other, so the kids are like, you know what, we're just going to dump garbage here because that's how we found it. We worked hard to clean up the lot, and you guys are just taking it for granted. And then the grown-ups feel bad and fix up the baseball field. And it was a cute episode. It was, again, a lot of quiet moments and atmosphere. We see them just hanging out, playing baseball on the street. There's time for them to feel hopeless, time for them to get the game in, time for Arnold to wake up, get excited, see them in the lot, then head back home defeated. My only real gripe with this episode is I thought it was a little too one-sided. Obviously the kids found the field first. Obviously they cleaned it up, and I'm totally on their side. But I feel, in the interest of devil's advocate, there's an argument to be made for the grown-ups because technically no one really staked a claim in the field. It's a public lot. The kids just happened to find it first, and there's nothing saying that it had to be theirs. I'm surprised that the grown-ups didn't notice the marked baseball field, but I feel like it would have been more interesting if there was a moral gray area about who the lot really belongs to, how do we share it, because questions like these do come up in life, where there's no easy answer, and I felt like this episode kind of did what the Sinatra homage episode 2, where it had a black and white had a morally gray conflict, and then just gave us a clear answer. And again, it was cute, but I feel like it would have been more interesting if there was a moral compromise, like they had to share the lot or the kids had to do something. But it's like, because I do think it's a powerful lesson for children to learn that adults are imperfect. Sometimes they mess up, sometimes they're selfish, but I feel it's also important to show that moral gray area. And the way it was executed, it just sort of felt like I don't know, I feel like some kids could watch this episode and take away, well, if we just complain enough, adults will give us our way. And yeah, that's true. There are times where it happens. But it's just, yeah, again, adults are right sometimes, kids are right sometimes, no one's perfect, and this episode kind of leaned on the kids' side, which I get because it's a show targeted towards children, but I still would have liked that moral gray area. Also, it was nice to see the girl in the green shirt with the brown hair talk. I don't think she's had a line yet. After that is the list. It's basically Arnold has a long weekend, and his plan is there's this insane list of all this crazy stuff that you have to do over the weekend, like get up at this time, watch cartoons while eating sugary cereal from this time to this time, ride down a hill, yada yada yada. And Arnold builds out. He's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna knock out the list," and everything goes wrong. And it was a cute episode. I mean, all of those days where we think we're gonna be productive, and then just everything goes wrong. We don't wake up as rose-like, and it's just this domino effect. So, and you have your rough days, but you end them on a good note. Because there's a subplot where the grandma's trying to get a piano into the house, and at the end she brings it up, plays a song, and it cheers Arnold up. So I could relate to that, but the whole time it just sort of felt like, I don't know, just the string of coincidences was a little too much. Like, first off, the alarm falling off, I'm like, this is why I always set multiple alarms. Because sometimes I'll hit the snooze button or my alarm will break down, so I'm like, I have one alarm on my phone, one alarm on my alarm clock, or I'll set one alarm, then two alarms, so if I sleep through one, the other gets me. So I can relate, which, yeah, I feel like Arnold slept through, because Arnold's missed his alarm a couple times, because, okay, here's the thing, there's a later episode that I recorded now, because I just watched it today, and I want to do that while it's fresh, so my mind full of energy, and in that one, Arnold also sleeps through his alarm, so running gag, but I'll talk about that more later on. But yeah, seriously, we just happen to be low milk, the TV just happens to blow out, the film happens to blow out. Again, it wasn't bad. Again, it's a nice celebration of what it's like to be a kid, what it's like to have your bad days, but it was a little cliche and predictable. It does remind me quite a bit of the episode of SpongeBob where the Best Day Ever episode. But that came later, so who knows, maybe they ripped off Arnold. Again, not a bad episode, just, I've seen it before, it was kind of predictable, and I didn't. And yeah. Which is kind of similar to what I had with this next episode, Haunted Train, which was another episode I enjoyed, but I thought it was, again, kind of predictable. In this episode, the kids are bored, so Grandpa tells them a ghost story about... Sorry if I'm rubbing my head, I don't know, it's kind of hot out, but... So, Grandpa tells a ghost story about how the train's haunted and it goes to hell, although he doesn't say hell because it's a kid's show, so he says underworld instead. And the kids, they're daredevils, so they decide they're going to head to the old train station and check out this ghost train that Grandpa talks about that supposedly heads to hell, and it turns out that it's not real, it just goes to the steel mill, and there's no myth. Or is there? And, I thought it was good. Arnold's been a pretty laid-back episode, so I do like the idea of doing something a little creepier, a little darker. Again, this could easily work as a Halloween episode. And there's genuinely creepy atmosphere here. You have... the story Grandpa tells is generally frightening. The train is creepy. There's fire. We're literally on the borderline of saying hell in Hey Arnold. And if I was a kid, I feel this episode might creep me out a bit, but because I've seen this sort of story before, I kind of, alright, it's not going to be anything. It's not. It was interesting, though, to see Arnold, Helga, and Gerald together, which was fun. And I like how, the story Grandpa told was genuinely frightening. I love how every time we cut back from the flashbacks of Grandpa telling the story to the kids, there's more and more and more kids gathering around. And, let's see. I'm surprised more kids didn't tag along to check out the train station. It was just a couple of them. And, yeah. The ending was obviously predictable. Obviously they're not going to send Arnold, Gerald, and Helga to hell. Nickelodeon would never let that kind of episode air. Ever. I am kind of surprised, though, that they did sort of have a ghost and reveal at the end, because Arnold's been somewhat of a realistic show, and for them to, I like the idea of the world having mythology, it makes it more real, but just having the ghost sort of pop out of nowhere just sort of felt kind of out there for me. Again, it was not bad, it was just one of those, what? And if you're wondering, like, what I mean by this feels, I've seen this sort of thing before, well, there's an episode of Jimmy Neutron where there's the Phantom of Retroville, where there's supposed to be a ghost in Retroville. Jimmy and his friends go check it out. It seems like it's a hoax, but then, or is there a phantom? Or even, like, with the free signs, I kept thinking of the hash-swinging slasher episode of SpongeBob. So yeah, like, I mean, again, I'm a ghost. Again, I'm always up for a little scare now and then, but I don't know. I guess I'm just too old for it. It was interesting, though, because I was looking at the credits, because when they get to the steel mill, I'm like, is that Homer Simpson? And then I looked in the credits and saw, yeah, that was Danny Casanova, I think. And it was also at that mind-blowing moment that I realized, oh my gosh, he voices the Grandpa, and that was just so cool. Like just mind-blowing. I'm like a sucker for voice actors, so I'm sorry that I didn't. Sorry that I don't have more to say. Next episode was Mugged, which it was at this point that I realized that Arnold's love interest was in the intro, so it was cool that she's in there. I was excited for this episode because it was directed by Craig Bartlett, and you could definitely tell that because this was a very stylized episode. In this episode, Arnold gets his bus pass stolen by a thug, which, why would you steal a bus pass? It's kind of useless. And so Arnold takes self-defense classes, but he takes it too far, using it out of anger, not for self-defense. And eventually, his grandma, who's been teaching him self-defense because why not, helps him learn his lesson, and he sets it straight, scares the robber away, and regains his bus pass. But as I was saying, this episode is very stylized, a lot of homage to, like, karate movies, samurai movies like The Karate Kid, and it was a very nice something different. Like, you actually had, like, him legit doing martial arts training, the atmosphere, there's him doing karate, like, the whole take the fly, that was really, really cool. And there was also a lot of surreal imagery, like when Arnold takes it too far and the bus shows up, I thought he was hallucinating or a dream at first. It had like this dream-like quality to it. And, I mean, my only other gripe was, let's see, I mean, it was a little weird that Arnold never actually hit anyone, he just sort of air punched and air kicked, but I mean, I understand that, Nickelodeon, he can't show it. And there was a groin joke when he goes to knock the thing off Grandpa's head, but he instead hit something else that Nickelodeon can't show. So yeah, that was probably one of the enjoyable episodes. Then you have the camping episode where Grandpa decides to show Arnold and Gerald the great outdoors, so he takes them camping. Obviously, because they're city people, they don't like it, so they complain, and Helga shows up, and her dad's all teched out. He's not roughing it. He has technology in the wilderness, which is never a good idea. Because, you should never mix technology with camping. It's like, if you're going rugged, you're going rugged. You're not going rugged. You're not moving your house out into the wilderness. But Arnold and Gerald, being safe people, decide to hang out with them, and Helga, wanting alone time of Arnold, says, let's go on a hike. They go on a hike, they get lost, and then Gerald and Arnold use their wilderness skills to find their way back to Camp and Grandpa. And, as an outdoorsy person who gone on many active family vacations and worked at numerous sleepaway camps, I enjoyed this episode. And, there's, like, fun fact, like, one time I worked at sleepaway camp, and we would go hiking, and some of the campers would complain about it. I'm like, guys, we're out in the wilderness, enjoy it. Like, I love those hikes. And so, on that level, I could relate. I also liked this episode because it was a change of pace for the show, because Arnold's a very much city show. It's about the city, about the atmosphere. So to have an episode where they're out in this rural environment was very refreshing and very unique. And something I feel like we're going to see a lot more of in the Jungle movie. It was the standard learn to appreciate the outdoors episode, learn to appreciate your family, and that aspect I could have felt like them better. I would have. It did sort of feel mean of Arnold and Gerald to leave the grandpa all alone. I mean, they still forgive him, but I still feel like it hurt. Like, they seem to be going for this vibe of grandpa, but like, well, I know they'll be back. Or, sorry, that was my grandpa impression. I'm so terrible at it. But but it just sort of felt like I would have liked something a bit more heartfelt. Kind of like, there's a similar episode of Gravity Falls where Dipper and Mabel go outdoors with Uncle Stan and they kind of just ignore him to just hunt this monster. And then eventually they feel bad and come back to him. And I would have liked something like that in Hey Arnold. But what we still got was pretty good. It was a nice lesson. You know, your grandparents, you know, family, they're trying to pass you worthwhile knowledge to help you because they love you. And, you know, sometimes you should pay attention because you never know when you might need that knowledge. And I really hope this episode was getting the whole berry thing right, or some kids are going to be poisoned. Let's see, anything else? I liked how Gerald and Phoebe, they still seem to be a couple. And, sorry, I'm just looking for my notes here. I think this is the first time we saw Helga's dad. I would have liked it if they had played the Home on the Range theme out for the credits, but other than that, I thought it was a cute episode. And then there's door number 16. In this one, there's Arnold. There's this neighbor on Arnold's flat called Mr. Smith, and he lives in a private room, own bathroom, has all his meals delivered to him, and the neighbors who don't live in his nice rooms get jealous, wonder what his deal is, like they never see him, they don't know anything about him. And then but Arnold's like, you know what, leave him alone. And then a package arrives from Mr. Smith, and everyone just wants to see what it is. But Arnold's like, no, this is Mr. Smith's package. We need to deliver it to him. It's none of our business. And the rest of the episode is him trying to find Mr. Smith while keeping the package out of everyone's hands. And then eventually, package is open. It turns out it's just a bunch of photos of everyone. And, yeah, it's kind of a standard episode. I could relate to it because, you know, in our neighborhood, at least in my neighborhood, I know most of my neighbors, but I think everyone has that one neighbor that we don't know anything about. They rarely leave their house. We rarely see them. And you kind of just speculate about who they are and what they are. So I could relate. It was just a standard episode. We have Arnold doing the right thing because he's Arnold. And Gerald mostly goes along with it, although he kind of goads Arnold to open the package, which I'm like, come on, Gerald, that's another point against Gerald. I mean, yeah. I mean, we see Arnold and Gerald as friends sometimes, but seriously, I'm just annoyed of Gerald constantly encouraging Arnold to do the wrong thing. There's some cute bits in it, like them walking around trying to find Mr. Smith in the hat store, going into the corporation, finding out Smith is such a common name, but it's ruined by Gerald. Like, seriously, Gerald, stop sassing the woman at the front desk. Like, if you just explain you have a package for Mr. Smith who lives in this apartment, you probably could have gotten it. But instead, we get that heartfelt ending mixed with the here we go again. Again, not my favorite episode. It is a little contrived, and Gerald is Gerald, but it was still enjoyable. And the last episode was Arnold as Cupid, and the thing is, I just saw this episode today, and I wanted to do a video about while it was fresh in my mind, because, again, I like talking about these episodes in greater depth. And I've been kind of rushing just because, I'm consolidating episodes in one video. So what I did is I recorded an episode, Arnold as Cupid, as a separate vlog because I figured, okay, that one deserves its own vlog. I have a very special opinion about that, and I wanted to just do it all in one video while it's fresh in my mind. So that one's recorded. You'll see it soon, but until then, you'll have to wait. So that's it for this Arnold bomb. Again, after the Cupid one, there will be a Christmas one, and then after that, it'll just be more just going through the episodes. Again, I apologize if I'm not able to talk about the episodes in as much depth as I would like, if I'm kind of glossing over stuff, but this is the best way for me to get all the Hey Arnold episodes in, while still blind vlogging about them before the Jungle movie comes out. So let me know what you think of the format, what you thought of these episodes, and until next time, take care.